Right, so it's the time of the year again where I feel like putting out my ideas, and this is something that I've been thinking about since the start of the year, and it's only to now that I just feel like sharing and talking about it, and putting it out on YouTube. And I want to talk about what I call gravitational thinking. And what it is a way of thinking that aims to examine where ideas and thought come from, especially the ones that hold unusual weight. It helps one to locate and understand what's underneath these ideas and thoughts, how to embrace the full essence of it, and how to fortify it so we can emerge with clarity, confidence, and conviction and make the impact we feel called to make. So I'll just dive straight in. So just sit back, maybe for like, I don't know how long the video is gonna be, maybe 20 minutes, but just sit back, grab a coffee, grab a drink, and just enjoy. So, who is this video for? Or who would this benefit? Two groups of people. The first, for people that feel like you see more than what the average person sees. You find that you tend to think differently from the norm. You also find that you have perspectives and you also find that you have perspectives that most people don't share, and you feel that this is a deep, intimate part of you that makes you you. When having conversations with others, people might sometimes think that you're overthinking, overcomplicating things, or being too idealistic, so you feel like you get overlooked. And sometimes we find it difficult to stand our ground because we might not be fully convicted of our ideas and our perspectives. So we feel like no one gets it. We feel demotivated and frustrated. So this is the first group of people. The second group of people are for people walking in deep calling and purpose. You are in touch with the deep part of you, something that most people might not understand. And that something deep tends to come out as visions, as ideas, as inklings, or a stubborn pull towards something. And it just doesn't go away. It could be a project you want to start, a business you want to work on, a message you want to share, something that you want to change. But honestly, it feels more like giving birth to something. You try to bring it to life and figure it out, so you bounce off your friends, but most say it's not practical, not worth it, not viable, or give 100 reasons why it just doesn't make sense. And again, sometimes it's difficult to stand our ground when we ourselves aren't fully clear what that thing is. So we feel like no one gets it. We feel demotivated, we feel frustrated, and sometimes we even start to question this thing in us. So the common problem here that I want to talk about, or that I want to address with gravitational thinking, is tackling the lack of clarity about our unique ideas and our perspectives, and which ends up happening, which tends to end up with people not understanding your ideas, and we feel misunderstood, and there is a lack of conviction and confidence. And so this vicious cycle just amplifies the lack of belief in ourselves. And so what this video wants to do is to help you build clarity, confidence, and conviction on the ideas and perspectives that you have, through this theory called gravitational thinking. And once you do, you become more you than you've ever been. You realize that every passion and interest stops feeling like a distraction. Every perspective becomes something unique you bring to the table. So there are three core pillars under gravitational thinking. Um, the first being understanding and locating what's underneath our ideas and perspectives. Number one. Number two, second pillar, embracing and beholding the full essence of it. And the third pillar, re-emerging and fortifying it. I want to begin by asking you a question. Where do thoughts and ideas come from before they are given language to? Where do you think thoughts and ideas come from before they are given language to? Think about the thoughts and the ideas that you have in your head. Where do they exist? Where do they originate before they are given language to in the realm of your mind? And this is a question we want answered, because if the words that we use to talk about our ideas and perspectives are still unclear, what if we can then examine the idea and your perspective without being fully constrained by language? And if you can do that, it is the beginning of clarity. And what I want to do next is to give you an illustration. What do I mean exactly? Now, I want to show you a photo of two women, one on the left, one on the right, both saying the words, "Be careful." On the left, we have a what seems like a nurturing, loving, nurturing woman hugging a friend, probably, and she says, "Be careful." On the right, what seems like a angry, maybe skeptic, maybe distrustful person um, telling someone to be careful. And just observe these two photos, and you'll quickly realize that while these two women are saying the exact same things, they mean two completely different things. On the left, the woman, what she's really saying, she's saying, "I love you and I can't wait to see you again. Be safe." That comes from a place of love. And from the lady on the right, what she's really saying is, "I don't believe that you're as good as you say. You're lousy, but you're not convinced." And where she's coming from is from a place of skepticism, low trust, anger, etc. And the question is, how did this even happen in the first place? How did two words that are exactly the same, sound exactly the same, spelled exactly the same way, how do they have two completely different meanings, even in the same culture? And so what I'm trying to get you to see is, um, what if we can separate these two things, language and the place of where it comes from. Language, which represents the container, and the place, i.e. essence, where it comes from, which is similar to semantics, except it aims to understand what is the thing that gives it meaning. Now, it's important that you understand this little diagram before we carry on, because what we want to do is to separate language from its essence, or language from where its place from where it comes from, which is good news because this can help you to better understand your ideas and perspectives when they might not have the language yet to express it out fully. So the example that I just shared with you allows us to derive two concepts. Now, the first being language as containers. And what we're trying to do here is to separate these two things, language and the place where it comes from. Language being the word "be careful," and the place where it comes from being from a place of love or from a place of skepticism and low trust. And in this context, in this theory, I want to replace this long sentence and with a word, essence or spirit. And I'm going to use these two words interchangeably for now. And this whole concept is similar to semantics, except it aims to understand what is the thing that gives it meaning. And the theory here is that essence is the one that gives it meaning. The first concept here with the idea that language is a container of the spirit or of the essence. And this is good news because this can help you to better understand your unique ideas and perspectives, even when they might not even have the language to be fully expressed out yet. Okay, and so there is a way to think about containers with this keyword sufficiency. The way to think about containers is, are these containers a sufficient or insufficient embodiment of the spirit or of the essence? Okay, so the first example here would be an insufficient embodiment of this essence. So an example here would be the definition of sacrificial love, or the entirety of the sacrificial love, with that being the essence, and containers use it with language as containers, using three words to describe sacrificial love. He loves me. Now the question I want to ask you is, does these three words, he loves me, fully encapsulates the entirety of sacrificial love? Does these three words, he loves me, sufficiently embodies or sufficiently encapsulates the entirety of sacrificial love? And probably your answer would be no, it doesn't. And you're right, and this is the idea that language as containers are not always sufficient to capture essences. Now, in the same vein, using the same example of having the essence of sacrificial love, a container that might sufficiently embody and represent might need more words. It would probably need maybe visuals, maybe music, maybe a short film, maybe actions, maybe behaviors, for it to be a sufficient enough container to represent it. So what does this mean for ideas, thoughts, and unique perspectives that we have? And I want to emphasize on this point, which is they are an expression of something deeper. And they do not originate at the surface cognitive level in the mind of in the realm of the mind. They originate from somewhere deeper, and language are just containers. So what does it mean for communication, clarity, and conviction? The usage of language and other kinds of containers that sufficiently embodies its essence would provide clear communication to the receiver of information. On the other hand, a lack of clarity of one's essence may cause one to use containers, in this case language, that would be insufficient in embodying its essence. And this would result in a big gap of mutual understanding between the two individuals, which would then often mean that the one attempting to convey the entirety of his essence might not feel seen, understood, or feel heard. And this might lead to a lack of validation from one's ideas, thoughts, which could result in a lack of conviction for one to pursue his ideas, thoughts, and perspectives. So this is the first concept that I want to talk about. So now I'll talk about concept 2, which can be derived from the be careful example that I talked about just now. And concept 2 is the understanding of essence as energy that generates ideas and thoughts. Now, to illustrate this point, I'm going to show you, or rather it is already on the screen, a picture of an electric car being powered by electricity. Now think about it. The car itself, without electricity, without power, exists in its entirety, its engines, its components, its parts, whatever components and whatever parts that allows the car to run. But the thing is, without energy, the car is incapable of operating, much less starting up. And so the human equivalent for this picture would be this spirit soul body framework, which is inspired from the Bible. From the top view, we have spirit soul body in concentric circles, and from the side view you have what we look like a black hole type diagram. And this diagram has inspired the name gravitational thinking. So what is the human spirit? It is the thing that generates our patterns of thoughts, which is in common language known as personality. So it is the thing that gives us our intrinsic personality. Now, in the realm of the spirit, of the human spirit, also lies calling and purpose. What are we meant to do on this earth? What are we designed to do and to accomplish on this earth? Okay, so what is the soul? Now, the soul has three components. The mind, which consists of of cognitive thinking, belief systems. Number two, the will, which is agency, and this is where we make decisions. And the third component, emotions, where we have feelings. Now, this is the part where it becomes interesting. So how does aspects of the human spirit affect our thoughts, affect our ideas, affects our perspectives? Which also, by the way, influences a person's perceived reality. But that's a story for another day. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Someone constantly asks, what is the safest option? Now, this thought pattern of what's the safest option isn't strategic. It seems to be rooted in a deeper orientation towards fear. And we can call this a spirit of fear. So some may think or have this question. What is the difference between a false narrative of how one sees the world that will lead to her constantly asking this question versus the actual spirit of fear? Now, my answer is, I'd like to suggest that the spirit of fear powers the flawed narrative. Powers the flawed narrative which exists in the realm of the soul or of the mind. Without the spirit of fear, the flawed narrative will be easily rewritten or be broken. So this is an example just to give you how the spirit of something can influence thoughts and patterns of thinking. Now, another example would be, what if someone constantly asks or says, what if there's another way to look at this? Now, we can also think of this as a spirit of creativity or innovation, because this person is constantly thinking, hey, is there a better way to do this? Is there a better way to look at this? Is there a better way to accomplish something? This person isn't satisfied with the norm or how things are done. This person aims to break boundaries. And so in a way, we can describe this spirit as a spirit of creativity and a spirit of innovation. And the third example would be someone is constantly drawn to helping the outcast, is constantly thinking about them. So how do we describe this spirit? Now, to add in complexity for you, there are two dimensions that words can exist in. Words can exist as in the realm of the soul or the cognitive mind, as containers of spirit. The second level is words as spirit itself, not containers. Now, the level one, we have talked about it just now. We spent entire time talking about it. What I want to talk about is Level 2, which words as spirit itself. They are not containers. Now, what do I mean? Now, here's an example from the Bible. The stone the builders reject will be the cornerstone. Now, if we use these words as, or if we recognize, or if we enter the dimension of the spirit by understanding this word as energy, it would then make sense that out of this spirit would then influence someone to be constantly drawn to helping the outcast or constantly thinking about the outcast. I hope I'm making sense here. And I am still trying my best to simplify things. But what I'm trying to say here is that on two levels, first we talked about words as containers. That's simple. The second one that might be a slightly more complicated is understanding words in the spirit dimension, which is this. An example would be this: the stones the builders reject will be the cornerstone. Understanding words here as energy, right? Understanding words here as energy. Now, in reality, there are a mixture of threads tied together. A thread, being patterns of thinking that are tied together, which would form the entirety of the human's pattern of thinking. And just a note as well, not everything has a spirit behind it. Some language is some language is empty. For example, if I am describing this cup, I'm saying this cup is white. It doesn't necessarily to have a spirit behind it. So this applies the same to ideas, and I won't be talking about this because it's too long. But I want to dive straight into what does this mean then for our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives. First is to recognize it comes from essence, the spirit, which the human spirit, which then powers up these ideas and thought patterns, perspectives, ideas. And it allows you to recognize it, locate it, recognize that it doesn't exist in the realm of the cognitive mind, the soul, but it allows when you realize that it exists within you, whether it has a form or not, whether it's a container or not, it allows you to recognize it and behold it without form. Now, this is really important, and I want to establish this concept by showing you this diagram of how things in the spirit grow. Now, we must understand that the things in the spirit start at seed stage. And for it to grow, in the context of a plant, it requires to develop roots. And once roots grow and develop, it's able to absorb nutrients, it's able to absorb water, enough for the plants to start growing into a bigger and bigger plant. It works exactly the same in the spirit, where it first starts out as a seed, but for it to grow, it has to first develop roots. What it looks like to develop roots is to build language, build understanding, build knowledge, read up on stuff, challenge your ideas, challenge the things that that gives you that pull. Read up on things, ask questions, do some research, and these things builds understanding. And once it builds understanding, and once you read up more, you realize there are some containers that would be a better embodiment or a insufficient embodiment of the thing that you're trying to describe, or the essence that you have. And along this process, it also gives you a better understanding of what this essence really is. And a lot of times, especially for ideas and perspectives, we might not even have the fullness of the language that we can put, but all the more we need to read up, all the more we need to talk it out, all the more we need to compare and contrast, what is and what isn't, through the concept of feeling. You gotta sense what this essence is really pulling you to feel and to embrace and to behold, and that's a way where we can develop roots before it grows into something mature. Tangent. I'm gonna go on a tangent here on the parable of the sower in the Bible, and I'm just gonna read it out to you because this is extremely relevant about how things grow in the spirit. So, a farmer went out to sow his seed, and as he was gathering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seeds fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seeds fell on good soil where they produced a crop, 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. And I'm just going to leave it as that. But yeah, so what it means for communication, clarity, and conviction. Having clarity and awareness of this part of your spirit gives you a certain level of lightedness, because you realize you can still be wrong, yet still acknowledge the part of the human spirit in you that makes you feel that pull, that gravity. Now, that part is not wrong. It exists, it's there, it's real. It's the unique part of you that needs to be protected and be given permission to grow. And allowing it to take root and grow gives you the conviction in that thing that holds weight deep in your spirit. So, I want to emphasize this so much, just because you have a seed in your spirit, either whether it has been deposited in you or whether it has been with you, since young or since birth, it doesn't mean that they can grow. Some seed stays as a seed, some seeds can grow with developing roots and then absorbing the right nutrients. So it's really important that I want to highlight this point, which is recognizing that your thoughts can be wrong, but you can still acknowledge the part of the human spirit in you that gives you that pull, that gives you that unique perspective, that gives you that unique ideas. Now, that part is not wrong. That part is the deepest part of you. It's there, it exists, it's real. And that needs to be protected, that needs to be given care and be nurtured. So I want to bring up another story here, the 5 blind men and the elephant. So we have one blind man so all of them are located at the different parts of the elephant, and they're tasked to describe the elephant, to make a guess of what the elephant looks like. So the man sitting on top of the elephant's head describe the elephant as a fan. The one in front of the trunk describes as a spear. The one in front of the trunk describes as a snake. The other one at the legs describes as a tree. The other one at the tail describes it as a rope. And so we have five men who are actually touching the elephant, and they are convicted that the idea of elephant is right. And I want to talk about this because why are they so quick to assume that whatever they are touching is of the entirety of what that thing is? And it brings me back to the point of when we feel things in the spirit, we try to put containers, we try to put structures that we are familiar with, which might not necessarily be always right. And it has been conditioned in us since young, how we understand business, how we understand certain concepts. And these two things might sometimes contradict. And the patterns of thinking of the world, or structures of the world, or norms of the world might not be able to embody their essence. And that is when you gotta make a decision. Do you trust your essence, or do you trust the norm? Do you trust what has already been established in the world? And my encouragement to you is, what if your essence produces new ideas? Build conviction through comparing and contrasting. That always be alert, whether whatever you're doing, whatever you're saying, your message, it could be your message, it could be your business idea, does it embody the thing that is in you? And it's a really important thing that I want to encourage you to think about. So thank you for listening to this video. There is part 2 and part 3, but it's too long for me to talk about it. I'll talk about it in a separate video. So if you benefited from it, drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. Also, at the start of the year, I'm holding a session where I go deeper into this, and I use these frameworks and theories to help us build clarity, conviction, confidence for the new year to step into your thing. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.